Good evening. This is Mike Farley, Poolside Perspective Podcast, and we're going to explore a lot of fun things for you tonight. So I'm Mike Farley. I've been doing this for 35 years, not the podcasting part, but the outdoor living design and specializing in swimming pools.
I've been in the pool industry for a while now, about 6 years going on. Officially did some stuff before I got in the industry as well with the pool industry, but I won't count that. But I'm Trey Farley. I'm his son. So I might look like him a little bit. I think a lot of people say I look like you a lot. So
yeah. Well, you got blue eyes. So
I got blue eyes.
And the height, of my dad. So
yes, sir.
So
got the nose too.
Yeah. So, but not broken by my brother.
No. Speaking of broken, I had a fun week.
Yes, you did.
Kind of. I accidentally banged my head with a stake. What is it? A post driver. So that was fun. Not really, but
got some nice, cool staples in your head.
Yeah, I got 5 staples in my head, and so we're recovering from that.
But they didn't have to shave your head, so that's cool.
Yeah, I got to keep the mullet. I'm very happy for that. I like my hair very much. So yeah, I'm just hoping it heals quickly because this tingling sensation of it healing is really annoying.
Yeah, well,
so bear with me if I'm bad this episode.
Okay, well, I'm sure you won't be.
I hope not.
But it's going to be a cool episode. We've got some really cool things to talk about that are going to be really interesting. We've got an awesome guest that's going to be on here.
Oh yeah,
that is renowned in the pool industry, and really, it's great opportunity for us to talk with him. Also, it's great because he works in a different area of the country, so he can talk about Florida and being on the ocean and some of the unique things that happen there and just his process and how it all works. So we're going to look forward to getting on the call here shortly with Ryan.
Yeah, it's about to start, but I think you two have a lot of similarities. Y'all are both visionaries in this space. Y'all probably have some of the most exciting outdoor spaces in our country that y'all have worked on. So I'm really excited to see the conversation between y'all two.
And we both started in the landscaping industry.
Yeah, and I've been to a couple shows now working with you, and I haven't met him at all. But I've seen his work, and I've admired him from afar. So I'm excited.
Yeah, well, we'll hopefully connect here shortly. I just want to thank you very much, Ryan, for being on the podcast with us today. And I checked and I tried to see if you'd been on other podcasts so I could glean some information. I couldn't find any. So is this the first one you've ever done?
No, I've done a couple. And I think in the pool industry, the one that comes up is Pool Magazine. I did a podcast with him that usually comes up in searches.
Yeah, I should have known about that because I remember.
And I gave away a couple of our little secrets there because I've had people come up to me since that podcast and they obviously paid attention. I wasn't sure, how many people listen to all the podcasts, or if they do, how much they get from it. But I had some people come up to me after that one and they paid attention. So it was interesting.
Well, there's a resource for other people if you want to check out some more of Ryan's work. So, so we read your bio. So tell us something interesting that's not on the bio about you.
Wow, it's not on the bio. Well, I mean, I think it certainly talks about it's a second generation adventure.
Yes.
Right. So I certainly credit my father quite a bit. It probably doesn't talk as much about my father as he should get credit for, because he was in the landscape industry and, was very successful at it, but successful not just economically, but from an innovation standpoint. He was one of the first big firms in Florida to employ landscape architects. So every landscape contractor in the 70s and 80s, I think, was the pinnacle of his career. Landscape contractors were all construction guys for the most part, kind of similar to the pool industry, right?
Right.
It wasn't a design focused industry, and it certainly wasn't a very professional industry. And so he was one of the first ones that saw room for innovation there, and the fact that, hey, let's take this business in this industry and turn it into something professional. Let's not model it against other landscape companies. Let's let's look outside the landscape industry and figure out how to model this thing. And that's what they did. And so one of the first things was to hire professional landscape architects. And then, everybody dressed, they dressed, back to then they wore business suits and things like that. And, approached it very differently and created I think one of the first corporate landscape contracting firms in the state of Florida. So that was the legacy that I grew up in and was raised in, was the landscape industry. And of course, I was always around swimming pools. That was always in the mix, but we were never the swimming pool contractor.
Right.
And we were never the hardscape contractor per se. So once I was ready to join the business, I quickly saw the next evolution of innovation, and that was controlling the entire outdoor space. Right? I mean, we have a why statement, and our why statement, I don't think it's very public. So you may not have seen our why, but this is truly why. Here's something. If you want to know the funny story,
yes.
This is the part that's not published. So my father, the landscape business, he sold at one point. So he sold the landscaping business, got out of that and got into site development and became very successful in site development. Much different business, much easier business, according to him. Much more lucrative, much less headaches.
It doesn't die.
Doesn't die, doesn't freeze. The hurricanes don't bother it.
Right.
There's no residential client or homeowner. So that was his goal. And that was one of the things that he accomplished. Well, the person that he sold his business to, the landscaping business, I think within about 5 or 6 years, they struggled and he ended up having to take the business back. So he took it back, however, maintained his site development business because at that point, that was his bread and butter and it was, really his passion. And the landscaping business that he took back, kept it very small and it was more of a hobby, I would say. Right. But it was there and it was alive. And so once I came back into the family business, my father asked me a question. He said, listen, would you like to go into the landscaping business or the site development business? And I said, I want the landscaping business. And he goes, oh, you dumbass. He goes, that was a trick question. It was a trick question. You want to go into site? He goes, I worked my whole life to get out of the landscaping business and to get into the site development business. He said, you do not want that. And I said, yes, I do. And he said, why? And I said, because it fulfills the creative side of me. And pushing dirt doesn't fulfill me. Right? I want to make money. There's no doubt about it. But I want to fulfill the creative side. But then there was something else in me. I said, I want to do what you did. I want to innovate. I want to innovate. I want to create this new industry. That's where I developed my why. So our why statement, whenever I'm onboarding somebody or explaining the why, I tell them this, the why is really me telling my father why I chose this landscaping side. And so here's our why statement. It's to unlock a home's potential for luxury outdoor living by challenging the status quo of how those projects are designed and built. What that means is this is 1999 now, I knew there was way more potential for, luxury functional outdoor living spaces than was being offered. And I knew the demand was huge. We're seeing, even back in the late 90s, $2 million houses with, $50,000 kidney bean pool and $10,000 worth of landscape and $10,000 worth of pavers. And you're asking yourself, why? And of course you see big estates in Palm Beach or California that do have, amazing outdoor spaces like you see today, but it was few and far between. And it was really reserved for the true rich and famous. And you didn't see it in even the upper middle class.
Right.
And the reason why, I think, was the status quo. The status quo was a home builder. As a homeowner, you would come to a home builder, and the home builder would hook you up with the interior designer and the architect that would design the house, and you'd spend 99% of your time and effort designing the interior. And then the exterior would be the afterthought where, They just hand you the pool guy, the landscape guy, the paver guy, the sod guy, the irrigation guy. And it was all an afterthought. And the status quo was really driven by the home builder in my mind. It wasn't what the client wanted. The client didn't want it to be an afterthought. I think the home builders just made it an afterthought.
Huh.
That's really what my take on it at the time was. So my first goal was, I got a challenge. I want to change that. So I want to create a new industry, an industry, not pools, not landscaping, not hardscape, an outdoor living industry where one firm, concept to completion, design, build the entire outdoor space. And part of that mission is going to be, we also have to take a little bit of the budget away, in fact, actually a lot of the budget away from the home's interior and apply it to the exterior. Because I have a firm belief that the exterior is more of a lifestyle enhancement than the interior is, right? I mean, we need the interior, we need our bedrooms, we need our kitchens, but that's not where the lifestyle comes in. The lifestyle comes in outdoors. And ironically, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was an afterthought.
Right.
So to change the status quo, I had to change the industry. And I'll tell you, it was not easy because you're fighting against the home builders, right? When I first conceived this, and my family's business was called Hughes Nursery. So it obviously had a heavy landscape overtone to it.
Right.
And then went out, got the pool license and started putting this team together, thinking I'm going to go to the home builders, and the home builders are going to be like, oh yeah, this is great. One firm that can execute everything outside the walls of the house, and they're just going to make it easy. Well, no, they hated it. They hated it because it scared them. They didn't want to take away budget from the interior to the exterior. They didn't want to give that much control to one firm.
Right.
So I got a brutal reality, which is, whoa, these home builders, they don't like this, and they resisted it. And so it forced me to pivot a little bit. And our business at the time, the landscaping business, was geared towards home builders. That was our client.
Gotcha.
All new construction. And so I had to pivot now because they weren't biting on this outdoor living thing. And I just invested a lot of the family's profits from the landscape business into building the pool division and the hardscape division and such, with the expectation all these builders were going to bite, and they didn't. And so we had to pivot. We had to pivot, and we had to start going retail, and I started doing marketing towards trade magazines, trade shows, things like that, and marketing towards the retail side, direct to consumer, and it was moderately successful. There was demand like I thought, but it still was not exploding like I thought it was. I was getting $100,000 job where it was still a $50,000 pool. Yeah, I would get the pool, the hardscape, the landscape, but combined budget was still close to the same amount that status quo was, which wasn't enough budget to do, of course, what we do today, but even what I was expected to do back then, which was create a functional space that has the right vibe and feel, to be inviting.
What time period, like what year was this around when you have this idea and they're not biting and you switch to retail and you're going through this process? Around what year is this, do you think?
Probably 2004 by now.
Okay.
So,
and during this time, so another interesting part of this is my sister and I were partners in the landscaping business that we took over from my father. And the landscaping business during that time was growing very fast, and it was very profitable. And so when I was trying to innovate the outdoor living industry, I was actually taking profits from our landscape company and investing it into the outdoor living business. And, the investment was not returning for a long time.
right.
And so there was a lot of family pressure that was being tossed around of, Ryan, stop trying to build masterpieces, stop chasing, your dreams and make money. And both my father and my sister were putting pressure on me saying, okay, we threw all this money at this thing. It didn't work. The builders didn't bite. Let's just keep doing landscaping. And I kept at it. And again, this was 2004. And then, the landscape business continued to grow. The outdoor living business started to grow little by little with the, on a retail side, very little with the home builder side. And then we have the 2008 crisis.
Right.
And, that was really the big turning point, which, we had a tough decision to make, right? Ironically, what stopped in 2008 was new construction, right? In 2008, home construction just stopped.
Yeah.
And so, but what kept selling? Outdoor living. So the outdoor living business actually started to move a little bit. And the landscaping business crashed, for lack of better words. And we were forced at the time to go through a major restructuring with the company. Really, it was a liquidation event for the most part, because the family, well, I'll leave some of this out because it's a long story.
Understandable.
Political story, but there are a lot of disagreements on what to do. And ultimately it was just break apart the business, liquidate it. Which at the time to me was I was the youngest. My father was retired. My sister was older than I was. She was in a different place financially. So to me, that was not the option I wanted. I wanted to keep going. And so the thought of, starting over or liquidating and what was very scary. Flash forward today, was the best thing that ever happened to me. But at the time, it was a very scary event. Wouldn't be here had that not happened, because it instantly gave me what I wanted, right? I was out of the landscape business,
right,
and I was all in on the outdoor living business. I did lose a lot of my big fancy assets. I had a big building, big showroom, big staff, and all these fancy things that, I thought I needed in order to build my business. And I think probably my biggest fear was that no one was going to buy from me without all of those things, right? Without a secretary answering my phones, and, without the office, and I had a showroom, and, all my fleet, I had a huge fleet of trucks all logoed up, and, I had to let go of a lot of those and almost start from scratch, and essentially went to the point where we worked out of my house for a while. And I put some of the remaining assets that I maintained in public storage, and had a small crew that worked out of a public storage unit. And I worked out of the home. And, at the beginning I said, well, this is going to be impossible. No one's going to spend, 6 figures on an outdoor living space from somebody that doesn't have an office or a secretary or any of these assets. And boy, I couldn't have been more wrong.
Yeah.
It was actually 180-degree opposite, because at the time, what people admired, they admired people that could thrive in that severe recession, and that they could actually operate lean and mean.
Right.
And so my customers actually saw what we did and admired it, and it started attracting them to us. So it was a very bittersweet experience, but it made us who we are today. And we couldn't be here without it.
Interesting. In 2008, what happened here in Texas, we weren't quite as affected as both coasts were, but the people that did do stuff were the ones that had money. And they found that, hey, we can get a great deal right now because, people are lean and they're trying to do things. And, some of the craziest projects that I had in my career all were done in 2008 and 2009 and 2010. Because they were very wealthy individuals that were like, hey, we can get a real good return for our investment at this point in time. So, I mean, anyway, that was just something unique that a lot of times people are like, oh, a recession is going to be an awful thing. And I'm like, well, if you're dealing with the right clientele, actually, it's not a bad thing. It's just when you're trying to deal with everybody, and you're trying to put something in everybody's backyard, then that might be affected more. I mean, I think that's what's happening right now too. So anyway.
Yeah, there's some something going on that seems a little familiar. I don't think it's going to be quite as severe, but there's some that feels similar.
Yeah.
I would agree.
We're going to take a break here for a second and get into outdoor living. So with outdoor living, we like to go to BBQ Bits here. We're going to share some information of everything that you may want to consider in your outdoor living space as far as features, especially for the kitchen. Hope you enjoy this. So I'm an egghead. I love my egg, but a lot of times people are like, the next step after becoming an egghead and cooking on lump charcoal is I'd like something that makes life easier for me, and so they look at pellet grills.
Sure.
Okay, and so walk me through this Memphis unit and walk me through pellet versus cooking on lump charcoal.
Sure. So pellet grills is going to give you that wood fire flavor that you're not going to get off of a gas grill. Also, you get space and ease of use, so I can set my timing on this particular grill. But one thing about pellet grills that they have not figured out that this company has, Memphis, is it just doesn't look good. And this company is sexy. When you build it in, you've got two models. You've got a 30-inch Pro and then a 40-inch wide Elite, and it just looks like it was meant to be built in. But also, most of your pellet grills will be made of metal or iron. And in a built-in scenario, it's just not going to last long, where the 304 stainless is meant to last a lot longer and defy any of the elements. The pellets are loaded in the back. This particular grill, you can mix flavors. So if I'm doing a couple of chicken breasts or even a pork shoulder, if I want to mix oak and cherry or pecan and cherry, I can separate the flavors and infuse them together and cook with both. So it's a really cool option. Also, I can see the whole cooking process on my phone with this particular grill. Now, if I want to do a couple of cowboy, bone-in ribeyes, I can get this grill to 700 degrees in about 12 to 15 minutes and get a nice sear. That's what it is. It's a Memphis wood fire grill. So when we do that, this is the diffuser plate, and we will sear over this with your liking, medium rare to well done. You've got plenty of surface area, warming rack area. You can buy other racks, as our customers have done together, to increase the holding power from anywhere from a turkey leg to a chicken half to thighs to meats. And then if I'm doing a really large brisket, I have an access entry here, the meat probe that will go into the meat, and it will tell me everything going on my phone. I can see all of that. Pretty cool item.
Don't have to keep your eye on it as much.
You do not. Versus charcoal. So charcoal is not as ease of use, but then the value added piece of charcoal is its flavor. Right. So if you're wanting to go out there and have a mixed drink, watch the Cowboys on TV, and relax a little bit, then maybe the charcoal grill from a big green egg, as we saw earlier, might be something would be value added for you.
So we talked about earlier smoke and a vent-a-hood and that type
Right.
situation. So this is going to put out a similar amount of smoke.
It is. If we run an interior wall, you definitely want a vent-a-hood over this particular grill. That's
Okay.
correct. Great question.
Awesome. Well,
Yep.
thank you for the
Yep,
details.
you bet.
So I hope you enjoyed the BBQ Bits that we just featured today, and we'll have more coming up next week. If there's something in particular that you're interested for, let us know, and we'll get back into the episode now.
The clientele, they did have money, and they know a recession as an opportunity. And so they saw how small and nimble we were, yet we were still able to go out there and hit some big projects. And so they respected that. And they thought they were getting a good deal, and they were getting a good deal because my overhead was low. And so it allowed us to keep moving. And so probably from 2008 to 2010, 11, I would say those are the dark era where we survived, and we fed the family, and we built some projects, but we really didn't. Well, truthfully, I didn't rebrand. I rebranded as Ryan Hughes Design in 2011.
Okay.
And that was really when things started to change. And that was a very strategic. A lot of people ask me, why did I name it Ryan Hughes Design, and put my first name there? And there were some very specific reasons. One of it was I wanted the brand to become a personal brand. To go back to before 2008 and the whole journey of becoming this luxury outdoor living design build firm and trying to become really the innovator and the expert, I was struggling to tap into that super high-end market. And I always knew that's the market I needed to tap in order to fulfill the potential, because without the clients with the seven-figure budgets, I'm not going to be able to build the true masterpieces, and I'm never going to be able to change that status quo.
Right.
And so before 2008, I was never able to tap into those seven-figure projects. And they were out there. They were few and far between, but they were out there, but I could never tap into it. Some of it was, I think we still had the name, really, the Hughes name was all about landscape production.
Right.
And the other thing, though, was that I, at the time, I was a very different person myself. I was trying to be a CEO, which is what my father trained me to be. And I was pretty good at it before 2008. But then when I went to rebrand, when 2011 came along and I started to rebrand, I asked myself, okay, let's try to figure this out. Why did we have this great product to meet this great demand, but I could never tap into that seven-figure market? And so I was able to do a lot of self-reflection, and I said, I need to build a personal brand. I need to make this thing more personal. And instead of being in the back office as the CEO, I'm going to put myself out front. I'm going to learn how to design. I'm going to learn how to build. Because at the time in 2011, I didn't know how to build a pool. I didn't know how to design. I knew how to hire people and manage people and create process and do all the things the CEO does. But I was not very hands-on, because that was the way my father taught me to be, which, again, works. It worked very, very well for him financially. But it was, I believe, the reason I wasn't tapping into that seven-figure market, because there was no front man. There was no face of the company. It was, to some degree, just a reputation, not a brand. Yeah, go ahead.
So it's interesting, because I always assumed, because you grew up in the landscape industry and your dad hired landscape architects, I figured you studied that. So that's not the case.
Well, I didn't study design. I certainly knew. I certainly grew up with a shovel in my hand and was out there working. Sure. and understood construction. But I didn't know design. I had no professional design experience. And I never had built a swimming pool at all. So when I got into the swimming pool in 2004, I went out and just hired a team. I went around and used recruiters and truthfully invested in some of the top, foremen, superintendents, project managers that Florida had to offer, and put this team together, and truly did have a great team. We had Brian Ben Bauer's ex-business partner, that he was in the construction firm with. He was my vice president for a while. And so we had a team that really knew their stuff. So that was part of my perplexity was, hey, I've got this great team. I got this great product. Where are the $1 million jobs? Right. And they didn't come. They didn't come. And then of course, 2008 came, we go through that process. And then, the 2011, the rebrand comes along. And that's when I said, you know what? I'm not a CEO. I'm a creative director. I'm an innovator. I'm a designer, and I'm going to figure this building thing out. I started learning design. I started taking Genesis classes, started going out in the field with some of the crews and getting in the hole and shooting the shotcrete and learning every detail. I wanted to know how to tie rebar, how to glue pipe, how to lay pavers, landscape, all of it. And so I spent the next couple of years working in the field physically, which was something I hadn't done since I was a kid, to build that brand. And then from there, 2013, that's when I actually started getting good at creating a brand as well. Starting to create the digital footprint, started to create, a different message and a tone to our marketing, started becoming better at telling stories, better at, marketing and networking and things like that. And then truthfully, one other big important renaissance was I started to be myself, because I'll tell you, I'm not a CEO to this day. We passed the $20 million mark and with Ryan Hughes Design, and I still don't let people call me a CEO. It's not me, right? I have operations people that run my operations. I'm still the creative director.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I'm a businessman. I understand finance very well. I don't like to be called that. A big part of it was I had to embrace the fact that I was more creative than I was operational. And so that meant I had to stop dressing the way my father taught me to dress. If he listens to this, he's not going to love this, but he taught me to dress a certain way, which was for him, it worked. In the 80s, when he dressed super professional like a banker in the landscape industry, he stood out. Now I don't. I dress like I would dress any day. I wear my white leather sneakers. I wear my jeans. I dress very fashionably. I spend a lot of money on clothing, but I don't dress like a businessman. I dress like I would dress.
Like your clients.
And so all of those contributed to the rebrand. And now we're in that 2013 mark, and that's when it took off. I think that Egyptian pool that you mentioned, that was probably around 2013 when we won that job, and that was when it clicked a million miles an hour. Next thing you knew, we the 7-figure projects haven't stopped ever since. But it all to me was a branding exercise. The ability was there, the work experience had been being invested in and all that, but it all clicked once I really understood how to rebrand myself.
Right. I'm curious. So you said that you just figured you needed to rebrand to have a personal, just overall, so that you could tap into this top echelon of the customers. But what made you? I understand the process and everything, but what do you recall? Maybe thinking or seeing something or talking to someone and just realizing, okay, if I rebrand and make it more personal, make it me, that will maybe launch me into that top customer, the 7-figure customer. Was there anything that comes to mind?
I knew I had to get people to trust, right? Because I tell this story to my team usually once a year, sometimes more often than they'd like to hear it. But we have projects now. We have a project we're about to start that's an $8.4 million residential outdoor living space. And, that was an evolution where, you started at 100,000 and then you got a 500,000 and the 500,000 led to $1 million. And it was an evolving thing, but, somehow I had to convince the first person to spend $250,000 because about $250,000 is, I think, our first true outdoor living project. We have a project on the website called Artistry of Space. And that was a $250,000 project that truly was our first holistically approached project where we've got the furniture, the kitchen, the bar, the lighting, the ceiling fans, the audio visual, the whole thing. And it took about $250,000. And what I had to do is I had to get that person to trust me because nobody had done that. There wasn't, right. I didn't have a portfolio for that. No one else really had that. And so I had to convince that person to do that. So I think the rebranding exercise was all about how do I connect with people?
Yeah.
And if I'm going to connect with people, I got to be me. I got to do me. I can't do corporate. I can't do my father. I can't try to pretend I'm something I'm not either.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do me. And I'm going to be authentic. And, in my presentations, I cuss a lot. I'm very passionate, and I use cuss words. I have high energy. I bang the table. I get up and run around the conference room sometimes. I just do me. And I didn't do that before.
Yeah.
I didn't do that before, and I didn't sell. I didn't sell to the clients. And once I started kind of letting my personality fly, I made that connection. Once I made the connection, people are like, all right, I trust you. I'll take a risk. And I would tell my story too. That's part of it. I would tell my vision. There's a great marketing guru called Seth Godin. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he says people don't buy products; they buy stories, relationships, and magic. And that's always resonated with me. And so I have a great story, and I love relationships. And then what's the magic? And so the magic is, to me, it's all those things combined into telling my clients that, there's one project we have, the Amarillo Sun project, that is one of the ones we became very famous for. That's that big multi-level pool with the glass tile mosaic that's right on the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, that's the Craig residence?
The Craig residence, yeah.
Yes.
And that was about 5 times more than the client wanted to spend. But I told him, I said, listen, if you do this, I guarantee you I will get this on HGTV. I guarantee you. I said, I will make you that commitment right now. You have to trust me that that's how dynamic and important this project is. And because that's what he wanted. He wanted something that was a showpiece that was had a really big significance for both him and myself. And so when he saw that ambition, he spent 5 times more than he expected to spend. And then when it was over, of course, I think it was less than a year, got on HGTV's best pools ever. And, I lived up to that. So that's been something I've used all along, is that storage, relationship, and magic. Well, our ambition for, changing this industry and creating a new industry for the most part. I have a lot of clients that are willing to spend big because they want to be a part of that story. They want to be a part of that whole mission. And so I guess to answer your question, that when I was rebranding and making the personal brand, that all that strategy was coming clear to me as the way forward.
No, that makes sense. What I got from that was almost like the CEO look that you had or were trying to be. It's kind of like a facade that wasn't yourself, and then you just were yourself, and that helps ambition and just, that just comes out naturally. So I feel like a lot of people can relate to that.
One of the things that I've noticed is you collaborate with a lot of people that are really good at what they do. But you also do a lot of things internally. So I was wondering how that process came about, because you guys had the slogan concept to completion. And as I mentioned when we were talking before we started, I think you're as a firm, you guys probably do that better than anybody I've ever seen. I mean, out to, I think it's really cool that you have the staging and you open everything up, and I mean, you get all the furniture and everything ready for the people. And I think and people do that with interior design, but you rarely see that on an exterior project, which I think we'll go into a lot more detail in just a minute on. But, you worked with PAL Lighting on the Craig residence. I mean, you work with Ray Corral on all these cool mosaics and tile pools and things like that. So, but when you said you did your very first project and you got the furniture and all the things that you were trying to incorporate in that setting, were you doing all that in-house? Because I know your wife is also very integral in design as well. And so I didn't know if she brought part of that to the table too, or, I mean, I was just curious on how that started, when you started doing furniture and, complete stuff.
Yeah, it was all in-house at the time. I mean, that first project we're talking about, that $250,000 project, that was probably in that 2013 range. And at that time, there was maybe 6 or 7 people in the company. And, we had some subcontractors involved, but they were the masons and the carpenters and things like that. But all of the design and all of the detail was all done in-house. And it was, not that we want to micromanage everything, but there wasn't a lot of resource at the time. I didn't have the relationships with Mosaic Assist or Pow Lighting at that point. I was somewhat alone, and so we were forced to go at it alone. So it wasn't that we were selfish or we didn't want to collaborate. We couldn't figure it out any other way.
Right.
And so, yeah, and my wife was a part of it at that time. After 2011, when we rebranded as Ryan Hughes Design and it was no longer a family business, my wife did express interest in joining the business, and she joined the business. And, for first part of the journey, she was in finance, and then now she is part of the furniture operation. One of the things that we did that was, I think, very innovative is we were nobody in the pool industry, and we were somewhat of we had a landscape legacy, but we had kind of left that. And so we were in no man's land. We weren't part of the pool industry. We weren't part of the landscape industry. Of course, nobody in furniture knew who we were. And so we were in no man's land. And so I said, we got to fix this. So this is again in that 2013 range. My wife and I went on the road, and we started going to every trade show we could go to. The pool shows, the landscape shows, the hardscape shows, the furniture shows. Dwell on Design, Boutique Design Hotel. We were literally, I would say 25 weeks out of the year, we went to shows, and we didn't have a ton of money at the time to be doing this, but we believed that we needed to go out and tell our story and build a network, build those relationships. So to this day, one of our 5 core values is relationships. You have to have relationships. And we chose an interesting angle, which was, in order for us to achieve this vision and accelerate the growth, I wanted to get all the vendors on my side first. So I wanted to go around and get Jandy to buy into my story, Fire Magic Grills to buy into my story, and then, yes, ultimately Powell Lighting. But I went around, Oceanside Tile, the furniture dealer. I went around and we really didn't have much to go by other than the story and the commitment to these vendors that, hey, if you align with us, if you promote me and, help me, train me, give me product, I will take you along this journey, and this is where this journey is going. And I'm going to make this a very visible, famous brand, and I will reciprocate with you guys if you join me. And so we went around the country and did that campaign, and I would say we had a lot of takers. And to this day, the ones back then that there are people that come in here and try to get our business every day. And if it's a product that was one of those early contributors that bought into the story and worked with us, you're never taking that business away from me. We're like Fire Magic Grills. You'll never get me to take another grill. We'll offer other grills in our product line, but Fire Magic will always be my flagship, because during that time, they believed in us, they promoted us, and same with Pow Lighting, and of course now Mosaic Assist. And so even though it started alone, it is very much about relationships. This journey has been about relationships and, collaboration. Yeah. But when I hear collaboration, I thinking, how other people in the industry talk about collaboration, which is, different designers working together and different contractors coming together and partnering. We do a lot of that internally because we are the design build firm. We want to handle everything from that aspect, but we're not at it alone. We're working with all the vendors and suppliers and manufacturers. That's really our team, and our subcontractors as well. That's really where the relationships and the collaboration comes in.
We're going to take a break for design concepts now. So design concepts, what we're going to do is talk about why we did the things on a particular job.
Sorry for the interruption, but we're going to do a design concept real quick. So I'm just wondering, we talked about collaboration a little bit on this episode so far, and you haven't heard about it, we're going to get to it. But do any jobs come to mind when you think about collaboration, maybe with an architect or whoever might be outside your realm of expertise?
So when I first started almost all my projects, I didn't work with anybody.
Okay.
Okay. So when I first came to Texas, I was starting to work with some builders, and there was a parade of homes that was going on, and they're like, we want to do something that's really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we want to do is we want you to sit down with the interior designer and the architect and the builder as we all discuss this pool project. And I was like, what? I mean, I'm the pool designer. Why do I need to sit down with all of you people to come up with the design concept? And so they gave me the plans, and I came up with an initial concept. And then we sat down and we all talked about it. And that was probably one of the most interesting exercises that I went through, because everybody brought a little bit something to this project. And when we finished with it, it was a really amazing project. We incorporated some product that had never been used before. It was the very first job that I did a rainfall. It was built into 3 arches, and behind the arches there was a tile mural that was done that we got from inspiration from a book that we saw one of the interior designer brought. And we incorporated a lot of the features with the home and the architect. So this project, in fact, the floors of the house were a stained, polished concrete, and it transitioned right out into the pool deck. And so the colors were all the same. We were able to pull a lot of the architectural features from the house into this, the colors that were done on the stucco, which was it was a Moorish style home. Project was built in 2001, I believe, in Plano. And it was really cool, down to, we did a spa, which we made it look like it was a fountain piece instead of a spa. It was a flush level spa, and it was a standalone. And then like even down to the gate that went to the utility area, we made it look, it was a hand carved door type situation. So everybody brought a little bit something to the project. And with that, we ended up with something that was really cool. It ended up winning Best in Show for the whole show, but it also ended up in Better Homes and Gardens. So it was a feature article. It was my first job that was ever photographed and published in a magazine. So collaboration, when you bring a lot of people together, you can work and each offer a little bit. You can end up with a better product than if it's just one person by themselves, in my opinion. So the designs that you do in collaboration sometimes is frustrating.
Yeah.
And sometimes people say things and you're like, why did you say that? I wish you hadn't have said that, because, gosh, you just took away this cool feature that I wanted to do. But also sometimes they bring in cool features that you didn't think you could do. And so it's a process. And the ideal situation is at the end, you want to come up with what's best for the homeowner.
Yeah.
And so by collaborating, that's one way that you can certainly do that.
100%.
Well, we'll show some pictures of this project, which it was done quite a while ago, but it still, I would say, stands the test of time. It was very clean. Almost modern type look to it. The only thing that we wouldn't do today that we typically did then is we used some Oklahoma flagstone for the coping, and we'd probably use a limestone or a travertine today. But other than that, it was pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, y'all enjoyed the podcast, and
we'll talk to you later. Part of this is you got into the furniture aspect, and that when you went on your tour. And so how did that transition to what you're producing now? Because you've come out with something that's really unique, I think, for the industry. Actually, I don't know of anything like it. Is your new showroom that's come out. Can you tell us how that journey started and what brought you to the spot that you're at now?
The furniture was one of the more challenging aspects of the whole journey. And I would say like in 2014, 15, there's what's called the casual market, which is in Chicago, and that's the big outdoor furniture market every year. And we started going to that show, and we would go around and meet all the manufacturers and again, tell that story. And, you know, it fell on them a little differently than some of the other vendors. Because the question was, well, where's your retail store? And I said, well, I don't have a retail store. And they said, okay, well, then all we can do is give you a designer discount, which is about 10 or 15% off for retail. And I said, well, the furniture store down the road sells at 30% off. So how do I compete with the furniture store if I'm only getting 15% off? And they said, well, unless you have a furniture store, we can't give you those kind of discounts because that's all we offer designers, and you're a designer. And I said, okay, you know, so we kind of just gave up that year. And then I think we went back in 2015. And by this time, I really started figuring out our online brand. You know, I'd started getting into social media. We got onto house.com, you know, Instagram. I don't think Instagram had started yet, but our website had gotten popular. And we really had, we did hire a PR firm. So somewhere around like 2014, we hired a PR firm that helped us get articles in magazines. And I did something very interesting with that PR firm, I think in like the 2015 range, which was I got on the cover of Casual Living magazine with the project, and I had furniture. So to go back, we had to sell the furniture because it was our value proposition. So we were telling the clients, this is our holistic approach. The furniture is part of it. I just wasn't making any money on it because I was only getting 15% off, and then, you know, selling it for maybe, you know, 5% off retail and, you know, making 10%. But so I was furnishing projects. So one of the little tricks I did was one of these manufacturers, their sofa set was on the cover of the magazine. Well, I gave them credit for it with the editor. And I said, make sure you put this manufacturer and give them full credit for this sofa. So then next year, we went back to the casual market. We did our campaign, we did our story, and they said, where's your showroom? And I said, it's right here. And I held up my phone and I said, it's right here. And they looked at me confused. And I said, this is my showroom. It's my virtual showroom. I said, what would you rather have? You want me to have brick and mortar where 1,000 cars pass a day? Or you want this post that I just did that 100,000 people just interacted with? And it said, oh, by the way, here's Casual Living magazine that I'm on the cover of. And here I had them list your product and give you full credit for it. So I said, which would you rather have? The brick and mortar showroom or the virtual showroom? And they said, deal. And I got full brick and mortar pricing from that point forward. Now, it only worked on a couple people. Other brands still stuck to their guns. They had to give them credit. They've got to protect the retailers, right? They've got stores investing in real estate and taxes and inventory, so that they got to protect them. Just like I want to be protected now with Solana. But I was starting to invest money. I was investing money in PR. I was investing money in social media, and I was able to show them how that investment was paying off for both of us. And then, little by little, like you flash forward now, when we go to the casual market, it's the opposite. They're chasing us, begging us, what do we got to do to get our furniture in your showroom? And so that's one of our funnest accomplishments was the furniture side because of how much rejection. I mean, we just got rejected over and over and over. And now it's just such a 180. Whenever I get stressed, I have a little gratitude board I have to look at and remind myself of some of the achievements. And that's one that's on there every day.
Yeah. It's amazing how people always look at you when you're successful and be like, wow, that must have been easy for you to do. And they don't ever know, all the labor that goes in on the back end of it, a true success. So anyway, that's, I understand.
A lot of rejection. That's right.
It's part of the process that we have to go through.
There was a lot of rejection in the pool industry too. There was, I can't name names here, but there was a lot of big people in the pool industry that didn't like our approach either. And that Craig job, that Amarula Sun job, that almost killed me physically what we did there. But I had to do that because I had to show these people that we weren't just some fly by night, that we could build something like that. And there was quite a bit of rejection in the pool industry as well.
That job, I've seen some of the structural things that you had to do to support that spa, which was suspended up there. You had to build like a 20-foot wall or 10-foot wall, or I can't remember underneath that to support the whole thing. And that was right on the ocean, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, we were 15 feet away from the water's edge of the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. So, just as a side note here, I know we're talking about the furniture and stuff like that, but are there things unique that you have to do when you're working in situations like that you don't typically have to do? Just out of curiosity.
A lot of it has to do with the dewatering.
Okay.
Because the water table, I mean, this is a lot of places in Florida. You dig 1 foot, you hit water.
Right.
So we were truly a 20-foot excavation at that point. So, not only are we excavating, but we're over excavating and benching everything. And then we're stabilizing this giant crater that every time the tide would come up and down, the tide would come into our excavation. And so it was quite the dewatering exercise. And it was just a brutal environment because it faced west. So the sun just was on you every day, and the moisture and the humidity. So my men working down in this excavation and creating the foundation system, which was essentially a bunch of helical pilings and grade beams, it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal, but it's really all about water was the challenge.
Okay. So that's similar to Louisiana. They have to deal with the same stuff. I mean, there's a lot of areas that have to deal with dewatering. So anyway, I'm always interested in different construction. Although some people are like, well, you just draw pretty pictures. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you got to know how to build it too. And when you draw the pretty picture, otherwise it's going to be a challenging life. Anyway.
That's right. That's right.
For all you true crime fans out there, we are going to explore pool true crime. And you guys will decide if this is a crime or not.
Pardon this interruption, but real quick, we're going to get into our little true crime segment. And so this week, we're going to be talking about, is signing a contract that's only 1 page a crime?
Well, I think the challenge is the complexity of the project that you're doing. I mean, if you're doing something that's very, very simple, I think you could probably get a contract on 1 page. However, I'm about details. So I want to understand what I'm getting exactly, so there's no miscommunication in the process.
Yeah.
So the 1 page contract is setting you up for miscommunication.
Especially when it comes to what we're dealing with, pools.
Well, I had a client that, or had some people that called me, and they were in the middle of a construction process, and they found me on Instagram. And so they were, local, and they were like, this is a disaster. And I said, well, let me just, so I understand what you're supposed to be getting, can you send me the documents, so I could take a look at it. So it was a 1 page contract.
Oof.
This was a project that was not just $100,000. This was several hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh boy.
This was a project that was had an 8-foot elevation change on it.
Oh wow.
And the contract did not spell things out very clearly at all. So it's all about communication. If you can explain everything that's going to be done, and you understand what they're doing, they understand what's expected of them, and you can do it on a page, great. But I don't see many projects that get done at all that you can just even list the things that are supposed to happen on the job in a very basic situation. So my typical contract is probably 12 to 15 pages.
Yeah, on average, easily.
Plus, attached to that is a set of drawings.
Yep.
Plus, attached to that is a 3-dimensional model pictures.
Yes.
So it's all about communication. So if you're willing to risk having a challenge during the project and not understand what they're going to be doing, because this client didn't understand at all what they were going to be doing.
Yeah.
And this builder didn't understand the site at all. And so what was on the one-page contract was going to be a disaster.
Yeah. So I'm not the expert by any means. That's you. But I do deal with taking our contract sometimes and comparing it to something that's supposed to be apples to apples. And a lot of the times when it is a smaller contract, maybe even a one-page contract, you're going to have a tendency of the items being very vague. Well, we're going to have bullet line items. They're going to be specific to exactly what you're going to get, how it's built to the T. And I think that's the biggest issue with such a small contract. And this can vary, but when you're speaking of thousands of dollars, the vagueness is actually the biggest deficit, just because you could be like, for instance, just how something's supposed to be built, the type of steel you're using or whatever it might be. But on there, it doesn't even specify that. It just says construction, or in general, it's just so vague.
It's all the details that you go into that where the questions come in, and there's nothing spelled out. And as a homeowner, a lot of times you don't know what those things are that you should be thinking about. And that's part of the reason that we do this podcast, is to give you information so you can know the things to look for. And so then you can, get the proper thing that you want in your backyard, because a lot of people are all over the country, and you need a resource to look.
100%. I think if you read the contract and you don't know what it is and you need it explained to you, that's fine. And when they explain it to you, it should be on the paper. It shouldn't be them assuming you understand what it is.
What I tell people, if it's not written down, you're not getting it.
Yeah.
Period. Okay. So you have to assume that. And they're like, well, they said in the presentation, or they showed me a picture of something, a cabana. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
So that we're building a cabana. Okay. Is there any mention about lights? Okay. Is there any mention about fans? Is there any mention about what type of roofing structure it is? Is it supposed to match the house?
Does it have a grade beam?
What's the foundation of it?
Yeah.
So, but all it says is we're going to build a 12 by 14 cabana. Okay. What's the ceiling material? Is it a flat ceiling? Is it vaulted? Is it exposed beams? Is it, what's the stain color? There's countless things that should be in that description, not a cabana. So I would say a one-page contract, and any project that's over $75,000 is a crime.
Yeah, I agree.
Your showroom's now open. It's been open for
is.
several months. And
It has.
Is that just for your clients, or how's that being marketed?
No, so where Ryan Hughes Design has ended in the last few years, our project minimum has grown, and it hasn't grown just because out of pride or ego, we said, hey, we don't want to do smaller projects anymore. It grew out of our just job costing, just our overhead. By building this great design team in our main office, we have a beautiful design showroom here, and even a little furniture showroom inside the building. Our overhead grew. We brought an in-house engineer. We have architect. We landscape art. We grew just this pretty amazing overhead. So that just kept creeping up the job minimum to where it's really hard for us to do anything under the $500,000 mark these days. That's really where we start. But our average project's probably $1.5 million to $2 million. That's the average of where the projects are these days. But the demand is high, right? We do a lot of marketing. We're big on social. So we get calls every day for people that have 250, 350, and we turn them down, and some of them get angry. Some of them just get defeated because they go like, there's nobody else. Where do we go? Who can you refer us to? Right. And so we had this idea, how do we service these clients? How can we don't want to be the contractor. I don't want to do production work again. How do we do this? And so what Solana is all the products that Ryan Hughes designed, that I went around the country and did that journey with my wife, and we curated all these products that we know work in Florida's environment. We know that they're the colors, the textures, all the Ryan Hughes Design products. Let's deliver those to the clients, but in a but not as the contractor. Let's do it as a retailer and let somebody else be the contractor. And so what this showroom is, it's all the products you'll see in a Ryan Hughes Design project showcased in a showroom. So you'll come in, you'll see the furniture, you'll see the pavers, you'll see the live walls. We'll have POW lighting, FX lighting. We have audio visual, all the furniture and even the accessories and wall coverings and things like that. They're all there. And so now if a lead comes into Ryan Hughes Design that we have to turn down, we tell them, please call our sister company, Solana, and you can work with a local pool builder. Spend $100,000, $200,000, call Solana. Solana can come in and design and accessorize all the opportunities, very much like an interior designer would a home.
Right.
Let the home builder build the home. Interior designer comes in and does all your curtains, your fabrics, your textiles, your furniture, sometimes even the dishes and things like that. Well, that's what Solana does. Let somebody else do the contracting, pull the permits, deal with all that dewatering, have all the headaches, and then Solana comes in and puts that Ryan Hughes signature look, and we can deliver that at any price point. And we can do it for homes, condos. We're getting into the hospitality industry now, where restaurants are.
I saw you on a yacht the other day. So, you're into all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, we were actually in France at the Cannes International Boat Show for that purpose. We were there. We were going to market furniture to the yachts. I mean, we didn't necessarily invent that. A lot of our furniture manufacturers are already on a lot of these big mega yachts, but we said, hey, let's be that brand. It's outdoor living, at its most luxurious. Let's tap that market.
Certainly is. So do you work nationwide, or are you working just in Tampa?
We want it to be a national company. It's our way of taking everything we've done with Ryan Hughes Design and that branding exercise, which has worked really well. We get calls from all over the country for work, and we tried this. I don't know how much but I've done designs outside of Florida. I've done quite a few out in LA. We just did 5 out in LA last year. I just did one in Houston on Lake Travis, I think it was, for a celebrity out there. They're not profitable for us with the size of our overhead. Just doing design only, that outside of Florida was somewhat of a distraction. However, now with Solana, if we design it and sell you all the products, it now makes financial sense. Okay. And it's scalable to us. So it is a national company. However, we're not necessarily marketing it that way yet. We did have our first client that flew in from Texas on their private plane a few weeks ago. And essentially what they did, they called Ryan Hughes Design and said, we'd love you. We're building a project ourselves and we're stuck. We've got the shell in and now we need all the materials and we want that Ryan Hughes Design look and feel. Ryan will pay you. We'll fly you on our private jet, come out here and help us. And I said, man, I'm just really not at the point in my career where I can do that. And I'm like, hold on a second. I got this whole new showroom. You got your jet. Instead of me flying out there, you fly here, meet my team in Solana, and they'll help you with all your materials. And I'm going to sell you your furniture. And they weren't expecting that one. I'm going to sell you your furniture, your live walls, artwork, pottery, planters, all that. And yes, I will help you pick all the pavers and things where you're stuck as well. And so that worked really well. And so that's the vision for Solana. It's not just a local Tampa showroom where, people can come in and shop for furniture and accessories. It's a national play.
Your design build firm is just though in that region. Is what
yes.
Okay.
We limit it to Central Florida, Tampa, Orlando, Sarasota.
Gotcha. Okay. Understand. People call me and ask the same thing. And I'm like, I'm Dallas, Fort Worth, I'd love to go somewhere else, but I'm blessed with enough stuff here in Dallas, Fort Worth. So
that's the way I see it as well. Yeah.
Awesome. So with all of your travels, I know that you in your bio, it said you traveled a lot when you were young. Where's the coolest place that you've gone for inspiration?
Wow, it's hard to say because I think it's all a culmination of all of it, right? You accumulate.
Everywhere.
So there's everywhere, and so it's, I mean, there's Cabo, obviously. There's always been innovative swimming pools in Cabo San Lucas, right? The Vanishing Edge, the sunken fire pit. I mean, a lot of people think we invented the sunken fire pit inside of a pool. No, that's been done in Cabo for a long time.
I give you credit for that,
Well, I'll take it. But no, I mean, I think in Florida, maybe, but no, I've seen it at resorts out there done for a long time. And so there are definitely some swimming pool stuff in Cabo and, but I've just done a lot of adventurous stuff. I've done Alaska, I've done the Scotland Highlands, done Australia, Europe. I think it's just travel to me. And the reason it's in the bio and it's part of the story is that it just gives me a different perspective, I think, than
100%.
Than some of the competition where I understand, I tell people I'm in the business of selling vibes, right? And these different destinations have different vibes. Yeah. Saint-Tropez, when I was just at the Cannes Yacht Show, we went from Cannes to Saint-Tropez. Well, completely different vibe, right? And I have people that, tell me I want the Saint-Tropez vibe in my backyard. Well, okay, I've been there. I know all the hotels. I know the beach clubs. I get the vibe. I know what you want. And that's when we're selling our RHD project, we put it in this order. This is our formula that my wife hates it when I give this formula out, but I think it's important to share. But this is our formula: functionality, feel, architecture, in that order. So first, how's this space going to function? How's it going to flow? Where's the caterer going to set up? Where's the DJ booth going to be? Where the kids going to swim? Where you going to do your cold plunges and get your sunlight and do your grounding for your well? There's always a functional component, and we start there before we even want to know what the architecture is. But then before we even get to the architecture, how do you want it to feel? And that's the vibe, right? And every world destination that I travel to has a different vibe. And I think that that's what's made me good at that part is I've seen so many, and I love them all, right? We travel places and go, man, we should move here. And then you come home and you're like, nah, we love it here in Tampa. And then you travel somewhere else. Oh, we should move here. Well, it's because there's just this different vibe, and that vibe makes you feel a different way. And so the more I travel, the better I get at creating vibes. And then, of course, now architecture, yes, it's important. Balance, proportion, all of that is important. So it's not that we're leaving architecture out. It's that we start with functionality and feel. That's become our signature. And I think the travel part of it has helped those first two aspects.
100%. No, every time I go somewhere, I get something else that inspires me to do something. So it's just, it's always fun just seeing different things. So what's for the future for Ryan Hughes Design?
It's it's evolving a little bit. I gotta be careful because we do have some very specific plans, but I will say there's something coming called Ryan Hughes Masterworks, which is a venture where, we're doing more than even outdoor living. I gotta just kind of leave it at that.
Sure.
We have clients that love what we've done so much with the outdoor space that they want more, and they want the holistic approach that we brought to outdoors. They want it for everything. And so there's going to be a very small division that does some very boutique projects for very, select clients. And so that's something we're excited about. And the outdoor living business, we're staying boutique, right? There were visions of grandeur at one time because the brand took off so fast that we thought maybe we'd be $100 million company. And that's not really in the goals anymore. It's really difficult to scale a design build business to that level and still maintain the quality and the personal touch and all that. So that Ryan Hughes Design will stay very boutique. And then Solana is hopefully our national brand that, because I love travel, and I want a business that puts me everywhere. And so that's this whole yachting play where we're going to do furniture on yachts all over the world. That Solana is hopefully our national and international business that takes us everywhere.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm curious because you've done so much amazing work. When it comes to like features around the pool and in the backyard, I'm sure you've done a lot of crazy stuff in general. Is there anything that comes to your mind that was just so maybe complicated at the first time you tried it? It was just aggravating to deal with, but it's a great feature. Anything pops in your head like that?
Oh, there's a lot of them, and that's a lot of them that we do that we're like, wow, we'll never do that again.
Okay. Well, maybe when you would
from an
do
economical
again.
standpoint, they all tend to work out in the end, but they sometimes take so much resource and planning and. But there was that water column that we did recently on that. There's
That's cool.
Crystal Fountains.
from Crystal Fountains, and that was nerve-wracking because it's 14 feet above the water, and it's a 4-foot diameter water column coming into a 6-foot lazy river, and it's right on a lake in Orlando, and so we're worried about the wind, and when this thing comes on, is it gonna hit the target?
Yeah.
And I've had different engineers saying it's never going to work. Water breaks up for that distance, but Crystal Fountains did a mock-up, in their shop, and they have wind resistance, and they did a lot of testing, and it looked like it worked. So I forget how many GPMs were going through that thing, like 750, something like that. It's a massive amount of water. But so, we had to build that structure, get all the plumbing through that, and we really weren't able to even test the thing until it was all finished. I mean, mosaic system, top, that fall glass tile, lazy river, the whole thing had to be finished before we turned that water column on. And I mean, man, it works in 25-mile-an-hour winds. It's amazing. But yeah, the stress that goes with that. My wife would prefer that we chill out on those type of things, but I'm actually looking over my computer, and it's on the wall in the conference room next to me. And, I don't know, that's priceless, right? So it's sometimes the juice is worth the squeeze.
Yeah. And you said you were creative, and that's why you picked the landscaping company in the beginning. So doing stuff like that.
That's right. That's right.
So how did that idea come about? Did you see that on another pool? Did a customer, because I figured this is a custom item, but did a customer want this, or is this something you thought of, or how'd that work out?
No, our clients, we have another very unique mantra, which is our clients don't tell us what they want.
Okay.
They tell us who they are, and then we tell them what they want.
Yeah.
So that particular client, all he told me was he messaged me on Instagram. That lead came in on Instagram, and he said, Ryan, I'm so-and-so, and I'm a big developer, build pools all over Florida, but I've seen your work and I love it. I want the most exotic pool anybody's ever seen in the state of Florida. Money's no object. And you went over to his office, met him, he hired us on the spot. And so it was basically carte blanche. It was something, he did say lazy river. So there was one thing that he asked for, which was a lazy river that he could have a full chef's kitchen where the people in the lazy river could go by and swim up and get their food from a chef. So that was one of the criteria. Everything else with carte blanche. So that detail was, there's an airport in China. I don't know if you've seen that airport with the water feature.
Yes. Yeah.
That was the inspiration. That had come out, I think, a year or two earlier. And so I always just like anytime you go in a lazy river, having some sort of water feature that as you're going by on the tube, you get pelted with the water. Yeah. So it's again, it's just all the experiences. And that's back to that whole travel thing. No one ever invents something from nothing. It's all influences that we gather throughout our lives. So the more traveled we are, the more we're out about, the more those influences come about. So yeah. But that Chinese airport was where that came from, I would say.
That's cool.
In that kitchen, there's a green wall. Are those live plants, or is that synthetic?
Oh, that's a faux live wall.
Yes.
And that's something that Solana has become the state of Florida distributor for. It's a product called Vistafolia. It's actually out of the United Kingdom, and it is phenomenal because it's UV rated. It can go in direct sun. I've probably been using it 5 years now and I don't think I've had one warranty issue with it. Withstands the wind, the rain, the sun. And I've had a lot of people that have real live walls that we're ripping them out and we're putting that product in, and they're thrilled.
Yeah. We started doing a lot of, not a lot, but we started doing synthetic about right before COVID happened. And people are amazed at the product, but I saw that and I thought that looked really cool. Then there's also a TV that comes out of the cabinet. That's really cool detail as well. But it's when I was poor and a young designer, we used to go to the bookstores and I would just flip through magazines, and my wife is like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, we can't buy them, but I just need to look at things so I can get inspiration from." And she would be like, "Okay." And, then I started showing her later on, "Here, I got this. Remember we saw this from here," and da-da-da-da. And she's like, "Oh, so you remember all these things?" And I was like, "Well, the more I put in my head, the more that I can bring out later on." And, the first wooden water wheel I did was, I saw Tischerman do one in 99. I didn't do one for 20 years later. But it was filed away back there, and it was like, we want to do this cool French style, water feature. Oh, how about a 10-foot tall wooden water wheel? And people were like, "Where in the world did you come up with that?" And I was like, "Well, it was stuck back in my head."
It's there.
And that's the cool thing. Pictures are one thing to see, but when you're in a space, to get the vibe like you're talking about, when you actually travel, that's the best situation, is to be able to experience that, not just to look at a picture and because you can't experience it the same way. So anyway,
Exactly.
But I understand where you're coming from. So anyway, in a lot of ways, so I started with a degree in landscape architecture. And I did the same thing in Northern California. I worked for 2 different companies, a landscape company and a pool company. And that's how I did my stuff. I didn't own the company, but that way I was able to create the same type of thing, up basically between Sacramento and Napa. It was a lot of fun, but we had fun coming back to Texas too. So anyway.
Texas is nice. I like California, but I don't know about living there, but I love California.
Oh, it was great place to experience, and the outdoor living aspect, I think, worked well with that environment very well. We were in Northern California, but just that experience and just that. But the industry has changed radically in the last 30 years, 35 years that I've been involved with it. I tell people, we started with pools. That was all we did, was a pool. And then, then people started wanting kitchens after 9/11 and, outdoor living spaces. And, now I tell people COVID changed the whole thing. Now we're going to do everything that's in the house outside.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun because the learning curve never stops. There's always this new thing that you got to figure out and, figure out how to build it and create it and, make somebody happy. But you've done amazing work, over the years. And I've admired, the creativity, which I even admire more now because I figured you were trained in landscape architecture or something like that. So you've really, done some really, really cool stuff over the years. And I really appreciate it.
Well, we do, and I don't take all the credit. We've had, and we still do have great designers in the firm. So, that design work's not all mine. I'm the visionary behind it all. And I inspire a lot of it, but there's an amazing team here of very talented designers that put it all together.
Yeah. Well, you're as good as the team that you have. And it's really cool because you do have a a very complete team in the scope of the work that y'all do. So anyway, any other thoughts today that you'd like to share?
No, I think we hit the story. I'm thrilled to talk about Solana a little bit. That was exciting because it's very new. So this is probably the first big public announcement I've made on it. Our grand opening will be in January. It's open, but we're still finishing it. So we'll invite you once we are ready to have our big grand opening, and love to get you out here and show you what we're doing.
Yeah, that would be fun. I'm gonna be with the tributary group, C. Ray, in a couple of weeks. We'll be out there and on the Miami side. So
Right.
hopefully hurricanes don't change that up either. But you never know.
I think it's staying away from Miami. I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I hope y'all are okay as well. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for y'all and over the next few days. But thanks again so much for being on. We'll include your contact information for your firm, if people have questions, and for Solana as well. And we've got some things that we'll post on social media and everything like that. So, but thanks again.
Real quick.
All right.
I have 3 really short questions for you.
Just
fun questions. Okay. So if you had to pick a book that was most influential for you throughout your life, throughout this whole process, maybe your career, what would that book be?
Seth Godin.
Wow.
He mentioned.
Sorry
Seth
to put you on
Godin.
the spot. So
Yeah, there's a book that it's gonna. Some people either love this one, or they hate it. But there's a book by sales trainer Grant Cardone called The 10X Rule.
Okay.
And that one has helped me a lot with scaling our business and really gaining market share and I don't know. It was a book that made the biggest impact for sure.
Okay.
So that was
that sounds awesome. The second question would be if you were to give any advice to a homeowner that's trying to shop for outdoor living, space, what would that advice be?
hire the right contractor.
There you go.
Right. And qualify them. I mean, if you're shopping on price, I don't understand why something as important as your home, everybody's so focused on price. You've got to go out there and find the best.
Yeah.
No matter what budget. I mean, you might have a smaller budget, but still find somebody that you can trust, verify, their reputation and go see some of their work, take the time to qualify them. And also I would say, something that's important that I think people overlook, make sure you find a contractor or designer that you like, right? You're going to be in a relationship for a while. So find somebody that you like and you enjoy, and it doesn't have to be a miserable experience. It can be fun. So find somebody that you like, for sure.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one, but that makes complete sense because relationships, like you've said throughout this whole podcast, they're a major part of everything. So, and the last question would be, if you would want anybody to get on this podcast, who do you think you would recommend?
Come on next. Again, I know like Jason Vickers out there in Alabama. I admire him a lot.
Okay.
He and I have a funny story. I met him on a tributary walkthrough, and I had the Craig pool up for an award in London at the International Design Awards, and he was like, I want to go with you, but he submitted one of his designs as well. And then we go to this thing, and we're all assuming I'm about to win, and my name's about to get called, and his pool won.
Oh, wow.
And the Craig didn't win, and his won. And so it was a pretty funny experience, but we've been very good friends. And so, yeah, he's just somebody, outside the area that I've gotten close with that I admire a lot. And I think he's got a pretty interesting story as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for answering those quick questions. And thank you so much for coming on this podcast. It means a lot. So.
You got it.
Well, that was a really cool podcast.
Yeah, there was some pretty cool information in there that, and some of the story I had no earthly idea about. So it was really fun to hear Ryan's journey and all the things that he went through. And it's funny that everybody looks at him today and they're like, wow, that's the pinnacle of success. And, nobody remembers 08, 09, 2010 when, he was rebranding and starting over. So interesting.
It was very interesting because I honestly, from my perspective, I just see his Instagram feed. That's what I know him as. His designs and what they do is outstanding. But it was really cool to understand him a little bit more. I think something that stuck out to me was the fact that he travels, and that's where he gets his inspiration from, because that seems like a trending theme. The more I talk to people in this space, travel really inspires a lot of people. And so, yeah. What stuck out to you?
Well, there's a couple of things that I thought was interesting. One is his dad's firm had landscape architects in the 70s, and that's what he grew up around. And so,
that unheard of?
Well, from a design build landscape company back then, yes.
Okay.
I mean, most landscape architects. I mean, when I said I was going to go into the residential market, they were appalled. My professors, they were like, no, gardeners go do that. You're well beyond, you should go design golf courses or communities or something like that. So to go work in the residential market was, not considered a good thing, but
you want to be creative.
It worked great for me.
Yeah.
So, but that was interesting that his firm had that, and he's continued that through the firm that he has today. So he's got some really creative people on his team. The other thing I thought that was really interesting is that when they went in 2013 and they were going through their whole rebranding thing, they went on a tour of all these shows for all of the industries to gather their team of people that they were going to work with and build their network and the relationships that they have and still have today, and the relationships that they have with, Ray, who was on our podcast earlier, and, PAL Lighting, and just different people that have brought the level of quality and craftsmanship that his company's known for, is basically, came from that time period. And also, I think a lot of times people talk about the really bad times and how they're really hard, but usually that's what, that's where it births, the great things that a lot of times people do, which I think they've done a marvelous job, and look forward to seeing what they do in the future. We'll sign off with that.
Yeah. Hope y'all have a good one.
Take care.